Hi, welcome back to the things we know. I'm getting better at that. When I start, Lisa has to give me so many signals because she's doing the recording. So today's conversation comes from something we've noticed and talked about a lot, and we both work on and struggle just like everyone else in the world, which is how easy it is to get caught in information loops that reinforce what we already believe. Media literacy is something that I think everybody is starting to learn about and think about. And so many other countries are way ahead of us with that.
Yeah.
The algorithms learn us. The headlines confirm us. And before long, we're living in a feedback bubble.
Yeah. And so we really wanted to have a good, real, grounded conversation about what it means to stay informed, not just entertained and outraged, and how to keep our minds open in a time where media is designed to keep us comfortable in our corners. This has been going on. The idea of knowing what the bias is has really been going on since 2016. And yet not much has changed. And the algorithms are getting smarter and smarter. And as you said, it's learning us versus us learning it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is going to is obviously because of these times and what we keep interrupting our normal desired programming for to talk about. This isn't just like about politics, really. Obviously, I wrote this and Lisa was like, what? I was laughing when I wrote this. We admit we both lean liberal. Lisa has often said that we're both dyed in the wool liberal. And I always correct her. I'm like, you were. I grew up in a conservative bubble. I didn't even know until I left Orange County, and people were like, "Ooh, you were raised behind the orange curtain." And arguably, someone could say that about my boys with Portland, right?
Yeah, the opposite.
So we care more about curiosity than confirmation, and we're constantly trying so hard to not match the level of willful ignorance and dehumanization that we both get really upset about. So the goal here is to have an honest conversation and offer ourselves and you practical tools for staying aware, thoughtful, less reactive, especially when we care deeply about the issues.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think, so up until recently, I would say probably the beginning of 2025, when we made a conscious decision to get rid of live TV. And it was a self-preservation mechanism at the time. I realized, I was very clear all along that me watching MSNBC I was getting the voices that I agreed with. I chose MSNBC because, especially in 2016 and so forth, I really appreciated hearing Nicole Wallace, Joe Scarborough to some extent, although he pisses me off, but like they brought on what used to be conservative voices. And I thought that now believed the way I did to some extent. And I felt like I was getting a more well-rounded bit. I think where I had to really watch myself was on social media, because I was seeing things like Occupy Democrats, right? And I'd see these posts and I was like, is that right? But I would have friends just repost it and repost it. And I was always like maybe not with Occupy Democrats, like do a little deeper dive and make sure that all of this is true. What about you?
I feel like I've had two moments in my life. The first one was in college when I was, parroting a lot of the Republican ideals that I'd been raised with. Like back then, I was very much, I mean, I definitely didn't just, like this is who I am. But I think when you're raised around certain ideals, raised Catholic, military, I didn't I didn't yet, like somewhere in sophomore year, I didn't yet have it in me to totally like think it was terrible that that the Iraq war was starting until I was in an argument. I was a poli-sci major and in an argument with a pretty liberal roommate / classmate, and I realized I didn't have anything behind it. It was
Mm.
just what had been fed to me. And now, like, what I want to also just point out here, just as a point of history, in fact, I did not know this at the time. This happened in '87, the year we graduated high school. But I've since learned about this. So the fairness doctrine was a policy established by the FCC in 1949 that required broadcasters to present multiple viewpoints on controversial issues. I can't talk today. It was abolished in 1987 during Ronald Reagan's presidency. Ronald Reagan was, highly thought of in my house and in my community.
Yeah.
And in California, where I grew up, which many believe and know that this, and you can track this with a lot of other things that came to play that are still churning out things today. The rise of conservative talk radio. So Rush Limbaugh was on. My dad was listening to Rush Limbaugh a lot.
Sure.
And there was a lot of behavior happening out there that sort of made sense, that like they really cared about character in that party, right? So like, I know, a hard eye roll. However, I wasn't so into that and aware of it, but that's where I realized anything I was going to argue was hollow. Fast forward to my sophomore year, where I was like, I have nothing to argue with on, and it really was like the beginnings of me, like I was always compassionate. I was raised that way. I was always involved in social justice issues. My parents, by the way, before they had us, like they were Democrats. They were raised, they loved JFK. They were Catholics and liberal. And, so my dad used to joke with me, if you're not, if you're young and not liberal, you don't have a heart. And if you're older and not conservative, you don't have a head. Right. So I think that's where I started to really like call home and push back with them and econ classes and other things. And anyway, I know we weren't going to totally just get into politics here, but that's my example. So that was the first time.
It's interesting. Well, thank you for pointing that out, because I also think there is an aspect there of when we know better, we do better. If it had just ended in 1987, when you and I are just now hitting voting age, right? So we're paying attention in a new way. I didn't grow up and people are sometimes surprised by this, but I did not grow up in a political household. This is all me. This is all my doing. And so I had nothing to push back on, until my mom remarried, and she married a man who was, I would say, honestly, I think socially liberal, but very conservative otherwise. And so I was having these same arguments, except it was with a stepdad, which it doesn't have the same weight as you're having it with your parents per se.
Right.
But my point is, if the fairness doctrine just went away in '87, we didn't really know any better.
No, true. And also, in fairness to my parents here, like I was raised to like always, for those who are much is given, much is expected. So always be taking care of your community. Always know that nobody's better than anyone else. And my dad was incredibly against government overreach and fascism. He was for small government. Like that's like, oh, the Republicans of yore, right? But in this moment of planes taking off for Baghdad, like a lot was stirring in me, and like really thinking about, and that is not an anti-military thing. It was more of a just like, who are we in the world as a country?
Right.
So that was my first time. The second time, as somebody who's for a long time at 56 been, pretty staunchly more on the left, as my dad used to say, I'm to the right of Attila the Hun and my daughter. But we used to have a lot of good conversations. He had to laugh when I got to go jogging with Bill Clinton on National Youth Service Day, because he was, not a fan. Yeah. Anyway, in more recent times, especially like we've talked about this with our oldest, like I had such a strong reaction and a lot of assumptions about what happened in the election last year. And my son, who tends to vote closer to me, had a lot more exposure to people on both sides and was really like, Mom, you're wrong about this. This is not what you think about what happened. And I've since learned that in, intense polling and research, that a lot of the people who didn't show up to vote would have voted for Trump, which is really shocking to me. But like learning about that and really hearing about it makes me realize, oh yeah, I'm very caught up in the wave of emotion around this. And I am literally like subscribing to some of the stuff that's feeding my emotion right now. And so that was a really great time for me. And nobody's giving us royalties on this, but that was a great time for me to learn about Ground News, because that's a great source for me to go and see with like the same exact fact, how it's being shown by either side and where the biases are and where it's not even showing up at all. So those are two times for me. Once like realizing, oh, I'm not as conservative as I thought. And the other one is, oh, I'm in my own closed loop.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's really, I think, thank you for both of those, because again, I don't think I knew I was in a closed loop. I was choosing to be in there, right? I I like yeah, look at me. I'm in my closed loop. I'm in my bubble. Um and but that also stirs in me the idea that we talked about a couple of weeks ago under on our what the fuck slash what to feel episode, which is because I was choosing to be in there, I also understand that my people aren't great, right? Like I also hold them to a high standard. And if they fall, I let it go. I don't go, oh, they're Democrats, so I'm going to let them off the hook, right? I think
No.
that's part of this too, is are you willing to let your heroes fall?
Yeah. I'm going to say something extremely partisan right now. So this is a side note.
I
This is
think I
like a
just
little,
did.
I know. I think you said it fairly. I'm going to
Okay.
say, and I think we agree on this, and you can tell me if we don't. Well, I know we agree on this. That is the thing that's fascinating to me. And I would love if someone could call in. We don't have that kind of format and argue with me and tell me where I'm wrong, honestly, because
Yeah.
I would really love to have a really healthy conversation with someone else. And I definitely have people in my life, a lot more people in my life than you do probably, who are extremely on the right. And so what's fascinating about this to me, one of the problems with, like, we all know, like, I think it's fact. I know it's fact that this current administration is maligning the left as like radical, dangerous lunatics hating this country right now. And that, and like, actually, the reason the left has done so poorly in this last election is because it's just not true. Nobody is.
Not the last election, the last
No, I'm
presidential
sorry. The
election.
last
Yeah,
presidential
I just want to
election.
be
Yes,
clear
last
on that.
actually, yeah, last actually, yeah,
Because I
last.
think that's
We'll
another
get to
piece of
that.
this,
Yeah.
right? Is that what you were saying about
Yes.
Peter giving you new information? Yes, we'll get to it. So I don't want to go too deep in, but it's the idea of like,
Yes.
yeah, okay. I'm not going to say
Great. No,
anymore.
no,
Sorry.
no. It's great. So I thank you for making that clarification. The reason, like, we've been so disappointed is it's like the good and the bad. It's a double-edged sword. What
Mm-hmm.
sucks is we have no cohesion, because
Right.
everybody is like, nobody is blindly following any one person. Nobody is cultishly, swept up in, it's okay. I'm not adhering to a certain level of my own integrity to follow this person. That seems to be winning these days.
Right.
And there's such a mess on the left because there's no real leadership there. I think that's fair to say. And there's no great agreement, and there's a lot of internal cannibalizing of like, we agree on this and this, but not that, so fuck you, so
Right.
it's just
And
a
it's
lot,
happening
is
again.
way too much of that, and it's happening again, but for
Yeah.
really good reasons. I'm actually appreciating it more this time than last time. I'm like, this is a damn mess, and I'm like, we're never going to get anywhere. And I'm also proud that we're not like blindly, like forgetting everything we cared about to follow somebody.
Yeah.
So okay. So aside from that, coming back from that, what I want to say is we are in a really interesting time. We are all in a fishbowl.
Mm-hmm.
We are all pawns on a chessboard. And I think the reason this conversation is so important, and a lot of people are having it, and I keep hearing it everywhere I go. I went and heard Timothy Snyder last week talk about, how none of us are free when we're predictable and all of that. But the reason we want to have this conversation is because what everything is, the way everything's playing out for me right now when you talk about media, is money.
Mm. Yep.
Like everything right now, we are so worried about all the people who can't afford to eat. We are so worried about all the people who can't afford the healthcare. We know, like we don't even know how we're going to afford our healthcare. A lot of people don't. Who is profiting off of our like, you know, off of the fact that our closed loops are separating us so hugely. So that's a big piece of it. Who's profiting? What do they want us to feel? And how are we just willingly like participating in it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I didn't mean to go off on a soapbox there, but yeah.
I mean, this is the things we know. We're allowed to be on a soapbox if we want.
Okay.
All right. So we're not imagining this. Researchers have found that there is a narrowing. According to 2021 Pew Research Center study, 64% of adults say fabricated news causes a great deal of confusion about the current events, and more than half admit that they struggle to tell what's real from what's not. That's amazing. And I get it. I mean, that makes total sense. It took me several years to realize that some of the things I was following were just speaking to me, because when you read on social media or you listen, like I said, the reason I chose MSNBC was I felt real comfort in hearing Nicole Wallace and Joe Scarborough, and I'm trying to think of other Republicans that were on there. Whatever. Now I feel comfort in Tim Miller, right? Anybody from the Lincoln
Aaron
Project,
Parnas. Right? I love Aaron Parnas.
Aaron Parnas, like anybody that came over from the Republican Party, even Liz Cheney or got it.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Aaron Parnas did not. You're right.
But my point is, anybody that came over from the Republican Party because they looked at what was happening when Trump got elected and were like, oh, hell no. I feel real comfort in that. And so it took me a while, them aside, so I'm not talking about MSNBC anymore, but the stuff I was seeing on social media, when you see something that aligns with you, it makes you feel not crazy. So it took me a while to realize that this is being fed to me and I need to look outside of this bubble.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. I misspoke for a second, but you're reminding me and validating me. And early in November, if you listen to, and if you haven't, please go back and listen to it, Faith and Freedom, because that is such a great example of what you just said and what we're talking about, which is like, I, for some reason, feel incredibly devoted to following all these deconstructed, high control, formerly evangelical people who are still very much considering themselves more Christ-like Christians, but they're constantly trying to debunk what's happening, and they're not surprised by anything that they hear in the news, and they're a great like neutral source because they understand, like they grew up really believing that all Democrats were evil, and that's their identity. Right. That's another thing that we were trying to touch on today. I don't know if we'll do it successfully, but is that identity becomes part of this closed loop. And so I follow these deconstructed Christians the way you like follow Tim Miller, and I do love Tim Miller. I feel somewhat of like a kind of a, what is it, like an endorphin hit listening to like, well, you used to work in the first administration and you're saying he's dangerous.
Yes, exactly.
You used to be his best friend. You used to be the person who spoke for him. You grew up thinking like these were the exact right things. And so for you to come out, you're not like, I hate them all, you're like, no, this was my whole world. That validates that, and the fact that there's no one, wearing a swastika next to me. Like those things validate it for me, because we're all constantly like, I'm confused. I don't know. And honestly, like I was just talking to my niece this morning because I'm out of town visiting her, and she was like, I actually in preparing for this episode, I have a lot more compassion than I did previously for the people in my life who would like aren't sure if they trust the news. Like I was kind of in my closed loop going, pay attention, and I'm like, me too. I understand it. Take care of your nervous system, and like Michelle Obama always says, you can't hate people up close, right? So it's like, be in person as much as you can with people, have conversations, and you're going to find we all have way more in common, and we all care a lot about what's happening to immigrants, and we all care a lot about healthcare. Anyway, so the digital platforms, as we started to talk about, those aren't neutral. There's a major MIT study in Science, I think Science magazine, that found that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news. And we talked about this early in the year about like what are facts, right? So like faster than true news on Twitter, mostly because it's emotionally charged. Our example then, one of our examples then was the fires were still, raging. And Oregon, where I live, was sending fire trucks, as many other states were. And in Mexico, by the way, they do every time. And somebody tweeted out, oh, fucking California and their liberal bureaucracy. They stopped this fire truck in Sacramento and they can't even go help. And right away, firefighters tweeted back out going, that's not even true. This was a like routine gas up and refuel and rest stop for us. Like that we are in LA fighting these fires. And the amount of people that like the amount of what's the word, like hits or like views on the first false thing was so much higher that like it just, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And totally. this is the point.
Absolutely. And again, they're hitting our emotional centers, right? So outrage or affirmation, as I was just talking about, travels way farther than nuance. You have to do the deep dive. To your point, you had to go then also see that the firefighters tweeted or X'd or whatever it's called now to say, no, this is actually legit. But if you just see that first one, it's like, oh, right? And so you click on the first one that makes you either feel outrage or feel affirmed. And look, outrage also gives those same endorphin hits as being affirmed, right? So you click on those things, and so the platform goes he and sends you more of the same and more of the same. Darren and I talk about this all the time. We watch YouTube quite a bit. Just again, we don't have live television, so we watch a lot of stuff on YouTube and on clips. And when when Liam comes over, he takes over our YouTube. So he'll want to show us little whatever things that he wants to see, and then it takes like a week to get out of that algorithm. We're being pushed all the things that are like what Liam showed us. And so it's just straight up fact, right? So there's this idea or this term from a book called The Filter Bubble that is, ironically, The Filter Bubble. And it's from Eli, I'm going to say Pariser? I don't know. His book is
Pariser? I don't know.
I'll spell it. Pariser, apostrophe S. The Filter Bubble, which warned that personalization can isolate us from the information that challenges our worldview. No question. And here's the thing, it's not going to get any better. So this is one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this today is so that you can do better, because this is only the beginning. Charlotte often says to me, which is hilarious, because here's this Gen Z kid, and she's like, I feel really bad for Gen Alpha because they will know nothing different. At least Gen Z had some sense of what it was like before this. Gen Alpha and generations after this will not.
Okay, so yeah, I would say what I have so much to say about this, and also Lisa and I are working on this too.
Yeah, totally.
Because we are definitely being fed an algorithm for sure. And what's tricky, and I've mentioned this before, my father, who was really conservative, always taught me to get your news from multiple sources. So much so that I just stayed off, because at the time, the most liberal thing to my parents was CNN. So I stayed off it completely. I have no algorithm with CNN, and nothing against them. Every once in a while, I see certain people in there and I love them, but I don't have an algorithm with it, because to stay in, close conversation with my dad, I was always trying to listen to a lot of different voices and read. So what's tricky is that it doesn't feel like a bubble. It feels like the truth. And I have to remember that. I have to remember that, because when everything you see confirms what you already believe, it's easy to assume that people who think differently are uninformed or irrational or evil, right? for like the Charlie Kirk situation was just incredible. And I remember saying that to you that day, like, just watch.
Yep.
And sure enough, like people who have only been fed the algorithms where he has said some really offensive things, we're being told you're taking that out of context. I was like, how do you take that out of context? And some of them, to me, not as many as people think, some of them in context, he kind of comes around and really realizes stuff. But in many of those, I don't know, they don't have me on that. But all that people who absolutely adore him were hearing was like they were seeing him as this person who was willing to be in conversations with people. And I don't want to get into a huge long conversation about him because I don't want to give, I don't really want to get into any of that mainly unless you do. But that was such an interesting example because a lot of people that you and I know didn't even know who he was. We did. Yeah. But a lot of people didn't. And that's fascinating. Also, just I've heard, Senator Chris Murphy say, like, you don't understand. A lot of these MAGA senators, they truly believe that Democrats are evil. Like, that's just been a huge thing that they've grown up with, these younger senators. Like that like there's just this evil intention. And so it's like, how do you even have a conversation when what you're being fed is telling you some false narrative that feels like truth? And then we're assuming they have all the facts and they're just choosing to believe something. And so that's fascinating too.
Yes, I obviously don't want to go deep on Charlie Kirk, but I have a different story that is also your story from this, which again speaks very specifically to social media. But the conversation that blew my mind that you and I had was that after he was murdered, you were seeing people you had not seen on because you had looked at a few things. You were getting pushed, people who you didn't even remember being friends with, saying, let's say, pro Charlie Kirk stuff. And you were blown away because you were like, I don't ever see this person in my algorithm. And why are they showing up now? And then you went and looked, and turns out you've been friends with them a long time. They posted a ton of stuff that wasn't in your algorithm. But because you had looked at a few Charlie Kirk things, now they were showing up. So again, it's a perfect example of when you look at something, you are then pushed more things. And you weren't being pushed the things that you believed around all of it or that supported your thought. You were being pushed the outrage. And that was a very, to me, that was a moment in time where it's almost like if there is such a thing as the algorithm gods, like the algorithm gods decided, let's not push people what they feel, supported, validated, let's push outrage. That was a huge moment in time where it was outrage, outrage, outrage. Everybody had their thoughts and everybody was yelling at each other and everybody was only believing what they saw. Like, I don't think anybody should be murdered. I also didn't care that he died because I'm just point blank, right? But because I didn't mourn his death, I was being told that I was this horrible human being. And I was like, what does one have to do with the other?
Yeah. And that's interesting because anyone who was really staunchly, identifying with their, grief over that would hear you and be like, you don't care. Right. And honestly, what we're seeing is what we're being fed and what we're seeing is a lot of people on the right having zero compassion for suffering until this happened.
Right.
And so that's confusing too. Like,
correct.
Where was your compassion for this Minnesota, lawmaker who was murdered with her husband at her home? Where was it for all these mass shootings? And it's not like, I actually was really sad. Remember, like maybe mainly because I accidentally saw it and it just rattled my world. And I also just happened to be I'm not proud of this and I'm not embarrassed of it either, but I kind of happen to be the kind of Pollyanna that was thinking someone young like that has the opportunity to like keep having conversations and come around. And so I never want anyone that I've offended by to die. I want them to be schooled.
Totally
that's my
fair.
fantasy. That's my fantasy.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I, definitely was on my top 5 to 10 list of people who were misleading young people. And I was really worried about it. My own kids knew who he was. They found him
Yeah.
really divisive and
Yep.
they were worried about it. He's not the worst of that
No.
group. In fact, many of them were like, he was the best of us. So that's a little scary. But I will say that was one of those times that we saw that, oh, we are being shown, we are living in two different worlds.
Yep.
And again, I want to ask, and we'll continue to ask this throughout the rest of this episode, is who's benefiting from this?
Totally.
Who is monetarily and power wise benefiting from the fact that we are all just at each other and not looking up.
Right. And so if again, you told me that story and I'm not kidding when I say it sent like a chill through my body when you told me that story about seeing this person who you never see and then you went and looked and it was like, oh, it's just because they weren't saying anything that could push outrage to you, but they were at that moment and so that's what you were being pushed. And so this is really where when we talk about media literacy, it is not just about mainstream media, legacy media, again, that I'm not a big fan of anymore. I used to be, not anymore. UNESCO defines media literacy as the ability to assess, evaluate, and create information on a variety of forms. So this is the socials, because a lot of people do get their news there. This is legacy media. UNESCO emphasizes that being media literate today, again, also means understanding the algorithms are shaping what we see. MSNBC knows their lane, so they're going to stay in that lane. CNN knows their lane. Fox knows their lane, right? So, and then if you go watch that stuff, everybody's watching. Your phone is watching, your TV's watching, so you are going to get pushed that stuff constantly. So you have the ability now to get media literate and search out other options.
That's super important to realize because I'm never going to be, turning totally away from what's happening because that's just not how I am. I always say,
We're not
like,
built that way.
I'm going to have to eat shit and nibbles and not like just get every time, sorry, that's such a gross
Especially
expression.
because what you're going to talk about next.
I know, it's just so funny. I didn't even mean that, but I always say that about a lot of things in life, right? Not just about this. Every time it's like turning your back on the ocean. I feel like I need a break from this. And I do. Totally. I completely take these apps off my phone. I don't look at it. And then especially this calendar year, and then when I check back in, I'm like, holy shit. Like I'm just getting hit with a wave. So, but I'm I am very awake to the idea that like the more I plug in, the more predictable I am, the more I'm getting fed into this and I'm part of it. So like I'm consciously every day making some decisions about that. And like I said before, where I was like in it going, how come you don't care? I'm realizing that I was like swept up in the waves and I'm out there going, how come you're not in here with me? And so I'm starting to really
pulled in by the undertow.
Yeah, exactly. There and how like the undertow or the riptide like takes you all the way down the beach and you don't realize it till you get out. That is very much what this reminds me of. There's a simple tool. This is what Lisa was laughing about, used in classrooms and libraries, called the CRAP test. So funny. CRAAP. It stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. I love this. There's so many countries that are way ahead on this, teaching their, like they looked at technology, they saw the damage it could do to young people and old people, and they're doing so much more media literacy. We are so behind on this, especially now with the Department of Education getting dismantled and dismembered. But anyway, the source on this CRAP test is California State University, Chico. It's a reminder to slow down and ask questions like these. Is this information correct? And going back to my recommendation earlier, before I go into these questions, Ground News is really helpful with this. They really, truly, it's a great way to filter what you're taking in and gives you a chance to take a breath, take a sip and go, okay, how's this making me feel? And is this information correct?
And to be clear, Ground News is an app. It is very easy to have access to. It's a free app, Ground News.
Yes. And it filters the sourcing and the bias.
Right.
So these are the questions, these 4 questions, right? 4. Yeah. Is this information current? Who wrote it and what's their motivation? And back to the current thing, now that I say that, there's been times where I've sent something to Lisa and you're like, yeah, that's from like 2016, but it's true. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I got all swept up. And my filter is like, can I react to this with Lisa and have us both, one of us pull the other one out of it? Or is it actually happening? Because it's really true. So, okay, is this information current? The second is who wrote it and what's their motivation? I teach my kids this all the time, is what do you think the person who wrote this wants you to feel? Right.
Yeah.
So who wrote it? What's their motivation? And this is in no way a diss on journalists. I really feel for journalists right now. They, like my husband who's in medicine, they actually take an oath. They try, like, they're all really aware of bias. They have it, but they are really trying to be the 4th branch and they're getting so maligned right now. Okay. So who wrote it? What's their motivation? 3, what evidence is there? This is where you kind of like need to come out of it, take a 30-foot view and look for some facts. And then last, what might be missing?
What's so amazing is these are great coaching questions too.
I know, it's true. They're
when you
very
think about
similar to like Byron Katie's 4 questions, right?
Yeah, I mean, totally.
What is the feeling you're having?
Yep.
Is it true?
Yep.
Do you know for sure that it's true? How do you react physically, emotionally, mentally to it? And then 4th, how could you turn this around?
Yep.
Right? What would you be doing instead if you weren't believing this? So you're right.
Like looking at the bigger picture instead of just, I mean,
the stories we're telling ourselves.
The stories, I mean, the same thing, right? So it's the stories we're being told or the stories we're telling ourselves. What else could be true?
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Then there's this other useful concept, which is called lateral reading. And this is a strategy developed by researchers at Stanford. So again, kind of like you're talking about with ground news, instead of staying on a single site to decide if something's true, because it's just going to keep telling you the same thing over and over, open new tabs and check what other credible outlets say about the same claim. So you could use ground news. Honestly, Darren's been doing this a little bit recently with a friend, a person he knows. He would call him a friend. I'm going to call him a person he knows, who every time Darren posts something that's political, let's say, and Darren's pretty, I mean, he's not quite as outrageous as I am. So when he posts something, it's pretty factual. And he always has this friend that comes in and Darren just goes to ChatGPT. He takes whatever the guy says and he puts it in ChatGPT and says, tell me what to say about this. And so even that, like, it could be that simple. ChatGPT has its issues. I'm very clear on that. But it's not that hard to find other sources before you go and share a million things. And that's the thing that I'm really present to on socials, is when somebody just like shares it and I'm like, but could you maybe for a second double check?
Yeah. I think it's it's a pause and check mindset, which is what I'm aspiring to. Pause, because I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live in like trauma, right? I feel like everybody's walking around in collective trauma. So I don't want to live that way. Because no matter where you are on the spectrum, when we're talking about politics or just like life right now, I think everybody, whether they're admitting it or not, are traumatized. But otherwise, the party that won the presidency wouldn't be so angry if they weren't also traumatized and fearful.
Yep.
So
1,000,000%.
I think like even a quick Google of site, source, name, and bias, right? Just
so
like name
site, colon,
source name.
Is that in parentheses?
And then bias. Source name is within brackets. So it's like, so Google this, like name the site and then, and the source name and then Google their bias.
Okay. Interesting.
Also, ground news will do that for you. I feel like they owe me money now because I've mentioned them like 3 times. Or visiting a media bias chart can tell you a lot. I remember like coming across someone who was like, I wanted to debunk everything. And she was like, big mega. And she went to learn how to do just cite media literacy and how to fact checking, and came out completely on the other side. I also think, like I have said to you so many times, there are things happening right now that I'm sick about my tax dollars going to.
Right.
And then it gave me weirdly compassion for people who, wherever they are in the world that they believe in, like they were feeling sick about what their tax dollars were. And for the first time, I understood that.
Yeah.
Didn't agree with it, understood it. And
Which is
that's,
leaps and bounds, right? Like that's what we
yeah,
need. That's how we come back together as
yeah,
human beings, is if we
yeah,
don't have to agree, we just have to have compassion.
yeah.
And I just want to insert really quickly, this isn't we're not actually just talking about the far right. The far left does this too. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
people who feel to be they use the same language, they use the same name calling, except that they are on the far left.
And it comes all the way full circle to where they're using,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, we've seen that with Maha. It's really interesting.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, yeah, let's not talk about that.
That
like,
we haven't said this in a while, but that could be a whole nother pod.
That could be a whole nother
It
pod.
won't
Yeah.
be, but it could be.
I would just say that, like, what I'm trying to do, and I can, anyone who knows me well, who's like knows me, where I'm good about it is when I hear news, read news, or like someone tells me something, I take a breath, sometimes say a prayer, and I check sources before, and okay, I'm always, just in everything I do in life, as a parent, as a coach, as a wife, as a friend, my goal, I don't always succeed at it, is to respond versus react. So in that being my quest that I sometimes fail at, I check sources, or I like go for a walk, clear my head, and then decide, like, if that settles and it's still true, then I might, I might share this, or I might have something to say about it, or I might go further into responding and reacting to it. Where I'm really bad at it is when I do give myself like my little, if I do have the apps on my phone, or if I am looking at stuff and I'm really charged about it, I have a handful of people I share it with. And what's great about it is which is you're like you're the first face that's there, which is great because you and I both have been like, that's actually not true, or that's from like 5 years ago.
Totally.
And not that we're the best check for that, because mostly we're like, yeah, is like, just understand that. Like, I'm in the bubble right now. I'm doing bubble kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus a better world. Like, what do I step out? What do I believe? What kind of world do my beliefs build?
I think you said that a couple episodes ago. You've been saying it to me for a couple of months. To me, that is my new guiding light, is asking people who do not believe like I do, what is your belief system building? I think that's so amazing. Here is where I am not good. I give you so many props, not only just ground news, because that is a kind of a neutral site where you can just see all the things, but Darren's good about this too. A study by the University of Pennsylvania found that exposing ourselves to diverse sources, even those we disagree with, increases empathy and reduces polarization over time. You just said that. I totally agree with you in your example of like understanding, I don't like how my tax dollars are being spent right now. So, okay, now I get how you didn't like how yours was being spent. That being said, I will be goddamn if I ever go watch Fox News. Darren will do it. He will go and try to see what's happening over there. And I'm like, I just can't. So, and I am not even going to try. I'm done.
I do it because I want to.
I let you do it.
Because I'm going to spend time with people I love.
True. I don't have to do it.
I heard Jon Stewart say this recently. Someone was like, who did he have on? Why did you platform that guy? I'm trying to remember who it was. And he said, I also platform my uncle every Thanksgiving, and he's a 3-dimensional person. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely, I watch because I want to know where it is they're coming from. I don't get mad
when that kind of stuff happens, right? I mean, I appreciate when
Oh
people
yeah.
who I follow do that. Like, I don't go, oh
You're
shit, well,
just
I'm never
no,
watching Jon Stewart again. You know,
no.
I am just not gonna go down that path.
It, it's
I appreciate that you do it, so I don't have to.
well, at a certain point, I did sort of do a comparison, and both ends of the spectrum yell a lot, and that's just
Yes.
they're both feeding into it, and it's
Yep.
and there is one podcast I listen to, and Griffin's like they're yelling the whole time, and the new evangelicals, the Tim and April show. I do really like them. They both grew up like ultra conservative Christian, and they were part of a whole movement of the Democrats are evil, and they've like over time the more they question stuff, the more they were like, this doesn't make sense. So they are so far on the left now that they're yelling all the time about it, and and Griffin's like, oh, they're just yelling, and I realize nobody, a lot, like a good portion of this country who isn't as like into following the news as we are, just they turn it all off. It's such a turn off. Like it's so tense. So yeah. And it's the hard part. It's uncomfortable to read something that rubs against me. It's uncomfortable to tune in and even hear it. There's certain people on Fox News actually that are like Jessica Tarlov, and like there's certain people that are on there that are really like trying to stay as objective as they can, and they do have some of those, but there are some people on there that I can't even stomach, and it's hard. But discomfort is also data. And it really is trying to teach me to like look at like, what is it I'm clinging to?
And again, a practical way to do this is to diversify your sort of news diet, right? Choose one. I could say center right, which is true. For me, I think, oftentimes what I bump up against, I just said it, is like the really far left stuff. Like, I think of myself as pretty progressive. And there's some like really far left stuff that just makes my head want to pop off. So I could probably do well to dip in there a little bit. But honestly, international sources are a great place to go. BBC, Reuters, AP, those aren't international. They are generally rated really high for factual accuracy and low for bias. I really do. I follow the AP, and I love that. Media bias / fact check can help map that landscape. Again, I feel like ever since 2016, there has been that, it just reappears on my socials every once in a while, like that almost Venn diagram of like, okay, if you're listening to this, it's very very far right or very far left, and then it goes out and until you can see, what exactly you're paying attention to. I just think, just be honest with what you're paying attention to. As I've said 3 times already, I knew I was in a bubble on MSNBC. I was choosing to be in that bubble.
Yeah, I do think it is a choice. And honestly, if anything we're saying feels too much, start small. If you really want, if maybe you're listening and you're like, God, they know way more about this than I ever want to. You do you. If you want to be a little bit more aware, we have said in many millions of ways on other podcasts, like nothing's going to change until people who look like us, speak more about how we've been living in 2 Americas for a long time. And I really have growing sense of compassion over like the way a lot of people voted because of the algorithms they were in. And totally. So start small, follow journalists instead of just outlets, like it's like us. I'm not following a party. I am really, really paying attention to people who walk their talk and who aren't, don't have all the, funding sources in their pockets. Same's true with news. Don't just follow outlets, follow people who seem to, walk their talk with integrity. Look for those who show their sourcing, cite evidence, and correct themselves publicly. That is huge.
Huge.
When it comes to any elected official, any representative of any type, and anyone who's in journalism, what we need to see is accountability and people willing to say, I was wrong. And here's what I want to say now that I know better.
We'll go back to the fires. There was a, and again, we talked about this at the beginning of the year in the what the facts, what are facts?
What the facts is good.
Also that, sorry. I mean, we've had so many this year. It's all starting to blend in. But yeah, what are facts? So I said this story then. There was a social media post that I saw that said from a person that a friend of mine who I really like, and feels very informed. And she had a post that said something about the budget for firefighters had been cut and the money had been put somewhere else, somewhere that I didn't agree with. I don't remember what it was. I mean, so much has happened since January 7th. And I remember reposting that and then finding out it was completely false. And interestingly, the opposite side is the money's been pulled from the police and put in something that they didn't believe, right? So again, we are being pushed our own narrative. And when I know I am wrong, I go right back out to social medias and say, I was wrong. Because I want to have integrity, And again, people might have only seen my first post and not seen my second. That sucks. But when I'm wrong, I am the first person to admit it.
I gained a lot of respect for people in the Olympics who just were all over that boxer who,
Yep.
About the gendering and all that, and people who like just quietly didn't say anything after they had been all over the place. And then other people who were like, I was wrong. Newsflash, we are living in a more authentic time than ever. And even though we are living in rough times, I really love that in every part of my life, I keep seeing that where people show up honest and raw and willing to admit they're wrong, everybody feels more themselves and feels safer and is more attracted to that. And this is like, I actually, believe it or not, I love to be wrong. I don't enjoy
agree.
I don't enjoy it, but I love it. I love it overall. Like it just feels really good to like have someone teach me something new and expand that part of me. Cause I wouldn't want to get it wrong and have nobody call me on it.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I want to just really quick before we, start to wrap up, I want to talk about just mindful engagement and emotional hygiene, because I think that's a big piece of it, right? Because we're all talking about our nervous systems. And I mean, I just, so much lately, and today is no exception. Like, I feel like I'm on the verge of tears all the time. Like I'm holding in a sob. And
I
and
cry
I think it's
almost
because
every day.
if we are paying attention, and there's so much suffering and there's so much trauma right now, I don't know how you don't. So I guess I even, again, more compassion for people who are just like, can't.
Yeah.
One of the most overlooked parts of media literacy is emotional literacy. The University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, which sounds so cool, I want to learn more about that, calls this cognitive resilience. It's about recognizing when information is designed to provoke fear, anger, or disgust. So emotions that override our critical thinking. There is a source, the UW Center for an Informed Public, which is called Building Resilient Societies in 2021, in case you want to look that up.
Yeah, no, I think you've been saying this the whole time, right? Before you share or react, and especially if the reaction is coming from such an emotional place, ask yourself, who benefits if I get angry right now? Who profits if I stay afraid? Those are amazing questions. And it is the thing that could it could be the thing that keeps you from disseminating misinformation.
Right.
Right. Even just, who benefits if I get angry right now? Who profits if I stay afraid? Oh.
Yeah. If I just met someone the other night who was so happy that I care as much about paying attention to everything as her, because remember that people in power right now have totally admitted that like flooding the zone is a strategy. So there's so much going on, and that's by design. They want us to be so numbed out that we step away. It's overwhelming. And so what I wish I could like knew enough about to do a whole episode on is like, who is actually behind this? Because I don't think they even live on this continent. Like who is behind this, and who's like playing us like chess pieces in it, without trying to sound like I'm some conspiracy theorist. Like, I mean, there is a lot of credible evidence that both sides have found over the last, couple decades of Russia and China, and this whole, growth of AI and technology and ways we're being monitored. I mean, that's on both sides. We understand that. I'm not trying to sound like out in some weird algorithm about that. So it's fascinating to think about what life used to be like when we weren't being monitored, like to realize that everyone knows, like that somewhere someone could monitor everything I'm interested in.
They
Right, like
do.
by how I shop, by how I shop, like that's how they're designing it. They're
Yeah,
designing
absolutely.
the price for the flights I might take. So
Yep.
I just think it's healthy to understand that, and it's also healthy to know when to take a break, when to step away, for your nervous system, for your sense of who am I in the world, and like what matters to me, and what am I doing just because it's there and convenient versus like what would feel better. Being in person with people is always going to feel better. um Having real conversations instead of all these people just angrily commenting on each other. Like I've said this before and I'll never stop saying it. What's fascinating to me is even something as innocuous as sharing recipes, people are just angrily coming in and saying shitty stuff. And anyway, I just think the American Psychological Association has found that, and
Yeah.
so have I, that found that limiting exposure to news during times of crisis can lower your stress and anxiety. That can be really hard for me because I feel like the least I can do is pay attention, but also I can't do anything about it right now. So if I'm feeling like my heart racing and I'm feeling just a wave of something, it's really good for me to take a breath and turn things off.
I want to say one thing that is, I don't want to, we're not going to go down this path, but you saying the thing about recipes made me think of this. When you see a response on social media that angers you or elicits an emotional response, before you respond, go look at that person's profile. I can almost guarantee you they have no posts and they have 11 friends. That is a bot. There is something we didn't even touch on, is the amount of bots that are in our social medias that are there just to stir the fucking shit.
They're
It
there
is,
to incite your anger. Yep.
yep. So put the
And
phone down
insecurity.
and step away. And insecurity, absolutely. Step away. Do not fight with bots. It does not make any fucking sense. All right,
Oh,
so
I'm glad you said that.
I'm gonna throw you for a loop because you thought you knew what song we were picking, and I changed it while we were
Right.
talking because
Oh.
it's absolutely, this is the song we should be talking about, which is "Chained to the Rhythm" by Katy Perry.
Oh, love that.
This is the exact right song for this. This song, my understanding, I love this song from the get-go. I didn't understand, my understanding of this song was she wrote this after Hillary lost in 2016.
Mm.
So here's the lyrics. Are we crazy, living our lives through a lens, trapped in our white picket fence like ornaments, so comfortable we're living in a bubble, so comfortable we cannot see the trouble? Are you lonely up there in utopia where nothing will ever be enough? Happily numb, so comfortable we're living in a bubble. So put your rose-colored glasses on and party. Turn it up, it's your favorite song. Dance, dance, dance to the distortion. Turn it up, keep it on repeat.
Mm.
I think, she wrote that because again, we all, and I think we fell for it again in 2024 too, right? Maybe a little less so, but we were just so sure that who wouldn't vote for the most qualified woman? Yeah, okay, yes, people hate the Clintons, but I mean, duh, why wouldn't they? We were against a man who was clearly a horrible human being. We were in our bubble. And I
Right.
think we
And
were less in the
we were up
bubble.
against voters who were raised to find her suspicious.
I know.
That's a fascinating thing. It's
Yeah.
funny you saying Katy Perry just made me realize also Taylor Swift's "You Need to Calm Down" because Katy Perry was in that video, like is also kind
Yeah.
of based on that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what are you getting so upset about on the internet at 5 a.m. or 9 a.m.?
So, to that point, right? Staying informed doesn't mean watching all the news stations. It doesn't mean being online all the time, but it does mean being curious about what we read, about the reactions we're having, about the reactions we're having for ourselves, the reactions we're seeing of each other. Curiosity. In this instance, curiosity does not kill the cat. Curiosity actually serves.
Again, this is us as coaches. Well, every one of us can choose really to become a more conscious consumer of information. That is something I'm working on too. We can check before we share. We can read beyond the headlines and build awareness of our own bias without shame.
So, your challenge this week, our call to action is read something outside of your usual circle and ask yourself how it makes you feel. What surprised you? Don't judge it. Don't agree or disagree. Just notice how it makes you feel, and then think about the people who read that on a regular basis. How it might make them feel.
And take ownership of
Mm.
your own information gathering. We're going to link to all the studies and tools we mentioned: UNESCO, Stanford's lateral reading, Pew Research, MIT, media bias fact check in the show notes. Let's all work a little harder to be responsible for what we're consuming, and how we stay awake, stay informed, and stay connected.
That's how we move this country forward at this point.
Yeah.
It really is. All right, everyone. Thanks as always for listening. If this not only landed for you, but you were like, Jesus Christ, so and so needs to listen to this, please forward it on. And of course, we will be back next week with something else we know.
Yay.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.